If you followed part 1, you already know the brutal truth. You can train hard every single session, hit every set on your program, and still walk out of that gym with almost nothing to show for it. And today we're going inside the machine to find out exactly why. There are 3 specific mechanisms that are quietly killing your training volume before it ever becomes muscle, and the wild part is that none of them are about your program. Your program can be perfect. These killers don't care. They live inside your execution, inside the gaps between your reps, inside the seconds you're not even thinking about. So if you haven't watched part 1 yet, go do that first. It sets the foundation. But if you're back and ready, let's get into the 3 hidden set killers that are robbing you right now. Quick orientation before we dive in. In part 1, we established that training volume isn't just about how many sets you do. It's about how many of those sets actually count as a meaningful stimulus for muscle growth. We called the useless ones junk sets, and we showed you that most people are generating way more junk than they realize. Now in part 2, we're naming the 3 specific killers responsible for turning your hard work into junk. And I'll tell you right now, killer number 3 is the one that genuinely surprised me when I dug into the research. Most people never even think about it. Keep that in mind as we go. Let me introduce you to Marcus. Marcus is a 28-year-old who's been training consistently for about 3 years, which puts him solidly in intermediate territory. He follows a well-structured push-pull leg split. He tracks his sets. He shows up 4 to 5 days a week without fail. By every external measure, Marcus is doing everything right. But Marcus has been stuck at roughly the same muscle size for almost 8 months, and he genuinely cannot figure out why. Sound familiar? Marcus is our story thread for today, because everything we cover, every killer we expose, you're going to watch it play out in Marcus's actual training. And by the end, you'll see exactly where his gains went. All right, set killer number 1, and this one is sneaky, is proximity to failure misjudgment. Here's what that means in plain English. You think you're training close to failure, but you're actually stopping way further away than you believe. And this matters enormously because the research is crystal clear that the stimulus for muscle growth comes primarily from the last few reps of a set, the ones where your muscle fibers are maximally recruited and genuinely struggling. A 2025 landmark meta-regression from Florida Atlantic University reinforced that working within 1 to 3 reps of failure is where the hypertrophy magic lives. Stop too early, and you're essentially just warming up the muscle without actually telling it to grow. Now here's the thing that makes this killer so brutal. Most people are genuinely terrible at estimating how close to failure they actually are. Studies consistently show that intermediate lifters, people like Marcus, overestimate their proximity to failure by an average of 3 to 5 reps, which means when Marcus thinks he has 1 rep left in the tank, he probably has 4 or 5. He's stopping the set at what feels like a 7 out of 10 effort and calling it a 9. And because he's doing this on every single set, he's essentially doing a high-volume warm-up session and calling it a workout. The muscle never gets the signal it needs. The adaptation never gets triggered. Marcus goes home sore, tired, and totally convinced he trained hard, and technically he did, just not hard enough to matter. So why does this happen? Why are we so bad at knowing where failure actually is? It comes down to a thing called the discomfort ceiling, which is just a fancy way of saying your brain is lying to you. As a set gets hard, your nervous system starts sending distress signals, burning sensation, labored breathing, that psychological urge to rack the weight, and most people interpret those signals as "I'm almost done." But those signals often start firing 3 to 5 reps before your muscles are actually at their limit. Your brain is trying to protect you from effort that feels dangerous, even though it's completely safe. The muscle has more in the tank. Your brain just doesn't want to find out. And if you've been training for a few years, this protective mechanism is actually stronger because your body has gotten really efficient at conserving energy during familiar movement patterns. Here's the fix, and it's actually pretty simple once you know what you're looking for. The most reliable indicator that you're genuinely close to failure isn't how much it burns, it's rep speed. Specifically, it's involuntary rep speed slowdown. When you're truly within 2 or 3 reps of failure, your concentric rep speed, that's the lifting phase, will start to noticeably slow down even though you're trying to move the weight as fast as possible. That's called velocity-based failure proximity, and it's one of the most honest signals your body gives you. So the practical cue is this. If your reps are moving at the same speed on rep 8 as they were on rep 1, you've got more in the tank. Keep going. When the speed starts dropping despite your effort, that's when you're entering the productive zone. One more practical tool for killer number 1, and this is something I genuinely wish someone had told me earlier, is the +1 test. At the end of every set before you rack or rest, ask yourself honestly, could I do 1 more rep with the same form? If the honest answer is yes, you stop too early. If the answer is maybe, you're getting close to the productive zone. If the answer is absolutely not, you're right where you need to be. This isn't about grinding out sloppy reps or destroying your joints. It's about being honest with yourself in the moment, because your brain's default setting is to protect you from discomfort, not to build muscle. You have to override that default deliberately, every single set. Now, before we move to killer number 2, here's a mid-video promise I want to make to you. Killer number 3 is the one that almost nobody talks about, and it's the one that's probably costing you the most gains right now. Not because it's complicated, but because it happens in the moments you think don't matter. I'll show you exactly what it is and give you a specific protocol to fix it. But first, let's get through killer number 2, because this one is going to make you rethink every set you've ever done. Set killer number 2 is repetition speed decay, and this one is subtle enough that even experienced lifters miss it constantly. Here's the concept. Every rep in a set is not created equal, and the way you execute the eccentric portion, the lowering phase, has a massive impact on whether that set actually builds muscle or just moves weight. Most people, especially when they're getting tired mid-set, unconsciously start dropping the eccentric. Rep 1, they lower the weight in 2 to 3 seconds. By rep 8, they're dropping it in half a second. And here's why that's a problem. The eccentric phase is where a huge portion of the muscle-building stimulus comes from. Research consistently shows that controlled eccentrics, typically 2 to 4 seconds, produce significantly more mechanical tension and muscle damage than fast, uncontrolled ones. Let me put some numbers on this so it really lands. Imagine Marcus is doing a set of 10 push-ups. If he's executing proper 2-second eccentrics on every rep, his muscles are under meaningful tension for roughly 20 seconds of that set, just on the lowering phase alone. But if he's letting the eccentric decay to half a second by the back half of the set, he's cut that time under tension almost in half. He's doing the same 10 reps. He's counting the same set. But the actual stimulus his muscles receive is dramatically lower. And the brutal irony is that the reps where he's most likely to let the eccentric decay are the hard reps, reps 6, 7, 8, 9, which are also the reps closest to failure, and therefore the most valuable ones. He's throwing away the best reps of the set. Serious, and here's what makes repetition speed decay especially insidious. It's self-reinforcing. When you let the eccentric go fast, the set feels easier, which means you feel like you have more reps left, which means you stop earlier, which feeds directly into killer number 1. These two killers are actually working together against you. Sloppy eccentrics make proximity to failure harder to judge, which makes you stop too early, which means your set was basically a waste. You can see how someone like Marcus, who is genuinely trying, genuinely showing up, genuinely working hard, can end up with almost nothing to show for months of training. It's not laziness, it's mechanics, and mechanics can be fixed. The fix for repetition speed decay is what I call the eccentric anchor. Pick a tempo for your eccentric and treat it like a non-negotiable. For most bodyweight exercises, a 2 count is the minimum, meaning you take at least 2 full seconds to lower yourself on every single rep, including the hard ones at the end of the set. For exercises where you really want to maximize hypertrophy, like push-ups, dips, or pike push-ups, a 3 count eccentric is even better. The rule is simple. If your eccentric is getting faster as the set progresses, that's not fatigue talking, that's technique decay, and you need to slow it back down. The moment you can't maintain your eccentric tempo is actually a much more honest indicator of failure than the burning sensation. Use it. Now I want to be real with you for a second. Actually, that's not entirely fair to say be real as if I haven't been real this whole time. What I mean is, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, slower eccentrics, got it, but won't that just mean I do fewer reps per set? And yes, it will. And that is completely fine, because here's the thing the rep count obsession gets wrong. Your muscles don't count reps. They respond to tension, time under tension, and proximity to failure. 5 reps with a perfect 2-second eccentric and genuine effort in the last 2 reps will do more for your muscle growth than 10 reps where you're bouncing through the eccentric and stopping 4 reps short of failure. Quality of stimulus beats quantity of movement, every time. All right, quick recap before we get to killer number 3, the one I promised would surprise you. Killer 1. You're stopping your sets too far from failure because your brain is lying to you about how hard you're working. Fix. Use rep speed slowdown and the +1 test to find your real failure zone. Killer 2. Your eccentrics are decaying as the set gets hard, cutting your time under tension in half on the reps that matter most. Fix. The eccentric anchor, lock in a 2 to 3 second lowering phase and treat it as non-negotiable. 2 killers down, 1 to go. And this last one, honestly, it took me a while to take it seriously. I thought it was too simple to matter. I was wrong. Set killer number 3 is interset rest quality. And I know, you just thought rest quality, that's the big secret. But stay with me, because this isn't about how long you rest. Everyone talks about restoration. This is about what's actually happening to your nervous system and your metabolic recovery during those rest periods, and whether your next set is starting from a position of genuine readiness or from a position of incomplete recovery disguised as readiness. And the difference between those two states determines whether your next set is a productive stimulus or a junk set. This is the killer that's invisible because it happens between your sets, not during them. Whispers, here's what they don't tell you about rest periods. The research on rest and hypertrophy has shifted dramatically in the last couple of years. The old advice was 60 to 90 seconds for hypertrophy, 3 minutes for strength. And that's not wrong exactly, but it's dangerously incomplete. Because the 60 to 90 second guideline assumes that your nervous system and your phosphocreatine stores, the energy system that powers your explosive muscular effort, have actually recovered enough to produce a quality set. And for a lot of exercises, especially compound bodyweight movements like push-ups, dips, and pull-ups, 60 seconds is simply not enough. You feel ready. Your breathing has settled, but your motor unit recruitment capacity is still significantly impaired. You start the set, and you're already behind. Let me give you the actual physiology here, because this is the part that makes everything click. Phosphocreatine, your muscle's fastest energy currency, takes approximately 2 to 3 minutes to fully replenish after a hard set. At 60 seconds of rest, you've recovered roughly 50 to 60% of it. At 90 seconds, you're at maybe 70%. At 2 minutes, you're around 85%. Full recovery is closer to 3 minutes. Now, if you start your next set at 50 or 60% energy recovery, you're going to fail earlier in that set, which means you're going to get fewer reps close to failure, which means the set produces less stimulus. You're not just resting less, you're making every subsequent set worse. And if you're doing 4 sets of an exercise, sets 3 and 4 might be almost entirely junk. But here's where interset rest quality goes beyond just duration. And this is the part that genuinely got me. What you do during your rest period matters almost as much as how long it is. Specifically, scrolling your phone, having a conversation, or doing anything that keeps your nervous system in a low-level activated state actually impairs your recovery compared to genuine passive rest. A 2025 study looking at neuromuscular recovery between sets found that subjects who sat quietly and focused on controlled breathing between sets showed measurably better motor unit recruitment on the next set compared to subjects who were mentally engaged with a phone or conversation during the same rest duration. Your nervous system needs to actually downshift during the rest period, not just pause. Excited, and this is where Marcus's story finally makes sense. Because Marcus, like most people, spends his rest periods texting, checking his training app, watching the person next to him, maybe having a quick chat. He's resting for 90 seconds technically, but his nervous system is never actually recovering. He's starting every set in a state of partial neural fatigue that he can't feel, but that absolutely shows up in his performance. His set 4 of every exercise is probably producing about 60% of the stimulus it should. Multiply that across an entire training session, across weeks and months, and you've got 8 months of effort that's generating maybe half the adaptation it should. That's Marcus's missing gains. They didn't disappear, they were never created. The fix for interset rest quality has 2 components, and both of them are dead simple. Component 1, rest longer than you think you need to. For compound bodyweight movements, push-ups, pull-ups, dips, pike push-ups, rows, 2 to 3 minutes of rest between sets is not excessive. It's optimal. The 2026 ACSM Resistance Training Guidelines, which synthesized data from over 30,000 participants, specifically moved away from the old 60 to 90-second dogma for hypertrophy and acknowledged that longer rest periods support better quality sets. You're not being lazy by resting 3 minutes. You're being strategic. The goal isn't to make the workout feel hard. The goal is to make the muscle grow. Component 2, use your rest period intentionally. Put the phone down, I mean it. Actually put it down and spend the first 60 seconds of your rest doing controlled diaphragmatic breathing. Slow inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. This isn't yoga class, this is nervous system management. That breathing pattern actively engages your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the recovery mode your body needs to be in between sets. The last 30 to 60 seconds of your rest, shift your focus to the next set, mentally rehearse the movement, think about the muscles you're targeting, set your intention for the rep speed and the eccentric. You're priming your motor patterns before the set starts. This is something elite athletes do automatically. It's not complicated, it's just deliberate. Now let's zoom out and look at all 3 killers working together, because this is where the full picture becomes genuinely alarming and also genuinely fixable. You start a set and stop at 3 to 4 reps short of failure because your brain triggers the discomfort ceiling. That's killer 1. The reps you did do had a decaying eccentric, so your time under tension was half of what it should have been. That's killer 2. Then you rest for 90 seconds while scrolling your phone, so your nervous system never fully recovers, and the next set starts from a deficit. That's killer 3. And the cycle repeats across every set of every exercise in your entire workout. A 2024 systematic review found that 4 quality sets per muscle group per week are sufficient to produce detectable muscle growth. But the key word there is quality. If your sets aren't quality, you could be doing 20 sets a week and still be generating mostly junk. Here's a concept from the research that ties this all together: the stimulus to fatigue ratio. Every set you do generates 2 things: a stimulus for muscle growth and fatigue. The goal of smart training is to maximize the stimulus while minimizing unnecessary fatigue. When all 3 killers are active in your training, you're doing the opposite. You're generating high fatigue through volume and effort, but low stimulus because the quality of each set is compromised. You're getting all the tired without the gains. And this is exactly what the Florida Atlantic University PUOS research was pointing at. There's a point where adding more volume stops adding more stimulus and just adds more fatigue. If your sets are low quality, you hit that point much sooner than you think. Let's talk about what Marcus's training looks like after he fixes all 3 killers, because this is the payoff, and it's actually kind of beautiful. He's doing the same program, same exercises, same number of sets on paper, but now he's pushing each set 2 to 3 reps closer to actual failure. He's maintaining his eccentric tempo through the whole set, especially the hard reps, and he's resting 2.5 minutes between sets with intentional breathing and mental prep. His workout takes about 15 minutes longer, but the stimulus his muscles receive is roughly double what it was before. And here's the thing about the ACSM's 2026 guidelines that I find genuinely encouraging. They found that even experienced intermediate lifters like Marcus can achieve appreciable gains with as few as 2 quality sets per session, provided intensity is maintained. 2 quality sets beats 10 junk sets, every time. I want to give you a practical protocol you can apply starting at your very next workout, not next week, not after you finish the series, literally your next session. It's called the Quality Set Checklist, and it has 3 checkpoints. Before each set, ask yourself if you're genuinely rested and mentally focused. During each set, maintain your eccentric tempo and keep going until rep speed slows despite full effort. After each set, rest 2 to 3 minutes with intentional breathing, no phone, no distractions. That's it, 3 checkpoints. If you run through all 3 on every set of your next workout, you will feel the difference immediately, not just in how hard the sets feel, but in the quality of the muscle fatigue you feel afterward. There's a very different sensation between fatigue from junk sets and fatigue from genuinely productive sets. Once you feel the difference, you can't unfeel it. One thing I want to address before we wrap up, because I know some of you are thinking it. This sounds like it's going to make my workouts longer and harder to manage. And honestly, yes, slightly longer. But here's the reframe that makes it worth it. If you're currently doing 4 sets of an exercise and all 4 are compromised by the 3 killers, you're effectively doing maybe 1.5 quality sets. If you fix the killers and do 3 genuinely quality sets, you've just doubled your effective training volume without adding a single extra set to your program. You're not doing more work, you're getting more from the work you're already doing. That's the whole game. That's what separates people who train for years and stay the same from people who train for a year and look completely different. Sarcastic, and look, I get it. The fitness industry doesn't really want you to know this stuff. Because if you know that 2 to 3 quality sets beat 10 junk sets, you stop buying the 12-week high-volume program that promises you'll do 40 sets per session and get shredded in 90 days. You start training smarter instead of just harder, and smarter doesn't sell as many supplements. But the science is the science. The 2026 ACSM Guidelines, the first major update in 17 years, synthesizing data from over 30,000 participants, explicitly moved away from the more is always better model and toward quality, intensity, and individualization. The bodybuilding world is catching up to what the research has been saying for years. You might as well be ahead of it. So here's where Marcus ends up. 8 months of frustration, 8 months of showing up and working hard and going nowhere, and the answer wasn't a new program. It wasn't more volume. It wasn't a different split. It was 3 execution flaws that were silently killing every set he did. And the moment he addressed them, his progress resumed. Not because he trained harder, he actually trained a little less in terms of raw volume, but because the sets he was doing finally counted. That's the whole point of this series. Hard work is necessary but not sufficient. Hard work plus quality execution is what actually builds muscle. And now, you know exactly what quality execution looks like. Your one action for today, not this week today, is to pick one exercise in your next workout and apply all 3 fixes simultaneously. Just one exercise. Push-ups, pull-ups, dips, whatever you're doing. Push the set to genuine rep speed slowdown. Lock in your eccentric tempo. Rest 2.5 minutes with intentional breathing. Do that on one exercise and pay attention to how different it feels. That single experience will teach you more about quality training than any amount of theory. And in part 3, the final chapter of this series, we're going to talk about how to build a complete training week around quality sets, including the exact volume ranges that the latest research supports, and how to know when you're in the productive zone versus the junk zone for your entire program. That one's going to be the most practical video of the 3. Don't miss it.